morning, everyone. Today, it begins the season of creation in the church. And today in the culture, it is Labor Day. So I invite you to rest from your labors. Please sit. And Labor Day is, of course, that time that we set aside to recognize that we, of course, depend on everybody else's work for our own well-being, and a time to notice that sometimes a single work of a single person can make a tremendous difference. So, this morning, let me share with you a parable, a metaphor, a tale from Kazakhstan. A story of work and wealth and worth. There were once two neighbors. One was a sheep herder and one was a farmer. The sheep herder's land was rocky with some stubbles of grass, but perfect for grazing sheep. The farmer's land was fertile and rich and perfect for growing crops, and the two lived side by side for many years and were very, very good friends. And then, for reasons that cannot be explained, the sheep herder's sheep caught a deadly pestilence and they all died. And the sheep herder had no more labor with which to make his wealth. So he went to his friend, his neighbor, and he said, "My friend, my sheep have died. My ground is rocky and the soil is not good for growing. So I will have to leave. I'll go to the city and see if I can find some menial job there that's suitable for a sheep herder. If not, I suppose I'll beg for a living." And his friend said, "No, you cannot go. You are my friend. Take half of my land and farm it for yourself." He said, "No, I cannot take your land." He said, "No, you must. We are friends. We have lived here side by side for years. Yes, there will be less for me, but there will be enough. If we both have half, you must accept. You must stay." And so he stayed. And they farmed on that plot of land, each on half, for many years, and all was well. And one day, the sheep herder was digging in his plot of land, and he hit something hard, and he dug down, and he pulled up, you'll not be surprised, a great bag of gold coins. And he went to his friend, and he said, look what I found in the field. You are rich. I found a bag of gold coins." And his friend said, No. You are rich. You found it in your land, and you dug it up. He said, "But you didn't know what was in the land when you gave me the land, but the land is yours now anyway. But you didn't mean I had everything in the land as well as on the land." And he said, "No, the gold is yours." And the two of them began, for the first time in their lives, to argue. They could not decide what to do with the bag of gold. So they had an idea. They said, "Let's go to the village and find the village holy man. He will tell us what to do." And so they did. They went to the village. They found the holy man, who happened to be teaching his 4 disciples. They set the gold before him. They explained their story, and the holy man said, "This is a good situation, my disciples. Tell me, how shall you solve this problem?" And the first disciple said, "Oh, dear Holy One, the gold was found in the ground. The ground is holy ground. Neither of them wants the gold. I say, you take the gold, you put it back in the ground, and you forget about it." The holy man frowned. The second one said, "Oh, the ground is part of the kingdom. The kingdom belongs to the Khan. I say we take the gold, take it to the Khan, and give it to him." The Holy One's face grew hard. The third one said, "Oh, my holy teacher, they have brought the gold to you. You are the court, and what comes to the court stays at the court. I say the gold should be yours." And the holy man's face grew sharp. And he turned to the fourth disciple and he said, "And you, what would you do with the gold?" And the fourth one said, "With this gold, I would make a garden for the poor." Yes, a garden for the poor. With this gold, you could buy the finest seeds, and there could be flowers that would bloom, that would delight their eyes, and soft grass that would grow under trees that would shade them. Rich fruit could be planted that they could eat and be nourished, and there could be pools of cool, fresh, clean water that they could drink without fear of becoming sick. I would take this gold and make a garden. And the Holy One said, "I like that idea. And you, sheep herder, farmer, what do you think?" They said, "Yes, we like this idea also." So they gave him the bag of gold and said, "Go, take the gold and make your vision come true." So the fourth disciple took that bag of gold, and the Holy One said, "Go to the city of the Khan, buy the most wonderful seeds. Here is a plot of land. Come back and make your garden." And so he set out. He set out and he walked to the city of the Khan, which was a long, hot, dusty, tiring walk. And the gold was heavy. But he buoyed himself up with the vision of his garden as he walked, and finally he came to the city of the Khan. He'd never been in such a large and loud and confusing place, but he asked a few people and finally found his way to the marketplace, where he asked a few more people and finally found his way to where he could buy wonderful seeds. And he walked towards the place and he crossed a path and he looked and he saw the most horrible sight. A camel train. And hung from the sides of the camels were birds, live birds, hung by their feet. And with each step of the camel, their little bodies thunked on the camel's rib cage. And they were so stunned and harmed. The young man was overwhelmed. He could not tolerate this vision. He took the gold. Without even thinking, he stood right in front of the camel train and said, "Where are you taking those birds?" And the camel driver said, "These birds are going to the castle of the Khan. Some of these birds come from distant mountains, faraway jungles, the sea. Some of them are the last of their kind, but their feathers will decorate his palace, and they will dine on their sweet meat. No one is rich enough, except the Khan, to buy these birds." And the young man said, "I will buy them." He said, "Get out of the way." He said, "I have gold." He handed the gold up to the driver, who took the gold, counted the gold. It was more gold than the Khan was going to pay him. So he took the gold, told the boy to take the birds. And so the boy, he went and he untied each one of the birds and set them down on the ground, and they shook the dust from their feathers and shook out the stun from their heads, and one after one after one after one, they flew away, and indeed their beautiful feathers delighted his eyes as they went. But there were some still that he let down, and they were too stunned to fly. So he let them all down. He laid them down by the path of the road, and he carefully took the dust out of each one's feathers. He massaged their little bodies until their hearts found hope again. And then, after a long day of tending to each and every one, one by one by one by one by one, they took off and flew to freedom. And his heart was so full of joy for what he had done. And then he realized what he had done. Now he had no gold to buy the seeds for the garden for the poor. And all the way back, as he walked to that plot of land the Holy One had given him, he walked in sadness and despair, and he sat down on a rock when he got there, and he said, "The gold was not mine to spend, but I had to save those poor birds, for to God they have such worth." And as he was sitting there, a little bird landed and watched him and listened and flew away. And then came back with another and another and another. And the little birds, they walked around and they looked at him and they seemed to say, "Let us help you. Let us help you. You helped us. Let us help you." And they started to scratch the ground and move rocks from one spot to another and make little furrows and dig with their little beaks, little tiny holes, and make little lines of soil. And as they were doing that, larger birds came and looked. And the larger birds flew away to the high mountains, the distant jungles, the seashore, and came back with the most wonderful seeds in their beaks and planted them in each one of the little seed mounds all through the plot of land. And the even bigger birds came and looked. And they flew to the mountain streams and brought back cool water in their beaks and watered all the little plants. And while the big birds were doing this, the little birds, they went over there and started scratching and digging with their beaks and pushing and clearing and digging and digging and digging to make a pool, a space for a pool. And when the whole place was dug out, smooth and round and deep, the big birds went again to the high mountain streams and brought back beak after beak after beak of cool, clear, fresh, clean water for the pool. And then a wondrous thing happened. All the birds landed, and very softly, each of them flapped its wings just gently, ever so gently, and breathed with hot, humid breath on the ground. And as they did so, soft green grass grew. And the seeds, they took root. They started to grow. Seedlings came up. They grew, and at the same time, trees started to rise up that grew strong and out into branch and into bud and into leaf until they were fully grown, and fruit trees were growing, and flowers were growing in so many colors to delight the eyes. And there it was, the garden, just as he had imagined. Word of the garden traveled like wildfire. And of course, the rich assumed that such a wondrous garden was for them. And so a rich man jumped onto his mighty steed and galloped up towards the garden, and as he came, a great stone wall built itself up all around the garden, and iron gates formed themselves at the front, and 7 great locks locked the gates shut. But the rich man rode up to the side of the wall, got on top of his horse, reached over for one of the golden apples, with which the trees were heavy. It reached for the apple, and as soon as that rich man touched the apple, he was thrown to the ground. Well, another rich man rode to the other side, tried a different apple, and reached, and when he touched that golden apple, he too was thrown to the ground. They rode away. And after a while, a long while, the poor came to the garden. They had heard of the garden, but they had to walk, so it took them quite some time to get there. And as they came, the 7 great locks on the gate opened up, and the gates swung open wide, and the poor came into the garden. And all day long they enjoyed the garden, the flowers so beautiful that delighted the eyes, the shade from the trees and the soft green grass. They ate the rich fruit and were nourished, and they drank the cool, clear water and did not get sick. All day long they enjoyed the garden, and when evening came, they went home renewed and refreshed. But there were some who had no homes to go to as the day passed and the evening came on. And so they stayed in the garden, and they lay down on the soft green grass where it was cool and comfortable. Those golden apples started to glow with a golden light. The 7 great locks on the gate clicked shut. And they gazed up at the sky, and there in the darkening sky of a late summer night, they saw shooting stars. The Reign of St. Laurence, it is called. And they lay down to sleep in peace, in safety, in welcome. Such is the Kazakh story of the Garden of the Poor, that all came to be from one soul's work, who turned wealth into treasure.